Check, check, quick sound check. Can everybody hear us loud and clear? What's going on, Coach Paul?
The buzzers, how we doing today?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. We got JD first in the chat, Coach Hoop number 2 in the chat, VSJ Trades in the chat number 3. Welcome to At the Buzzer, everyone. Doing pretty good, Coach Paul. How are you?
I am good. Very relaxed day in this um
Extreme
can I
volatility.
say extreme volatility. So
Extreme
didn't trade
volatility.
much was and I think that was the key. I just looked for what I look for and it actually was kind of boring. But there was quite a lot of action today. How about you?
There
How
was
was
a
your day?
good, good. Got short the Russell. We'll talk about that trade a little bit later. Had to, get a little recovery after yesterday's trading, so kept things very simple. Looking for simple trades. Gave back a little bit of profit trading the S&P, trying to get long a little before the S&P was ready. So gave back some profit there. Hit the lockout button. Got a haircut. Hit up a new barber. I think he did a pretty good job. I think he
Yeah.
did a pretty good job. We'll see on the replay what it looks like. I told him we got to look good on camera. But yeah, it was an interesting day. Again, a ton of movement in the markets. We'll take a look. It was across the board. The equities, the metals, the energies, a ton of movement. Well, welcome to At the Buzzer, everyone. Our market recap. If this is your first time here, the goal of this segment is not to talk about my haircut. It is to review what happened in the markets for the day. We may talk about some markets that you have not traded before, but we believe our goal as traders is to identify opportunity. We want to see how we can take advantage of those opportunities while managing our risk. I'm Coach Jay. I've been a Topstep performance coach since June of 2023, and that is Coach Paul. Coach Paul, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Coach Paul. I've been with Topstep since April of 2023. I've been involved in the futures trading industry for 4 decades, and I'm here to share some of my experience, some knowledge, and hopefully help you become a better trader.
Awesome
And
stuff.
by the
Thank you
way,
for that,
Coach
Coach
Jay,
Paul. Yeah, what's up?
I've had the same barber for 10 years, Gillette. Haven't changed. Never fails. Never fails.
There you go. Gillette, right? What was the tagline? Gillette, the best a man can get, something like that. Is
Yeah, I
that
think
their
that was
tagline?
it. Yeah, I think so.
There you go. I've tried to cut my own hair. I was actually looking at a picture of myself from the COVID days, where I tried to cut my. Everyone was on the wave of cutting their own hair, and I have a picture. I was at a friend's party, and my the clipper guard fell off mid cut, uh,
Did you survive?
and I was
Well,
bald.
did you,
I was bald for a couple days. That picture will never make its way to the internet. Hopefully, fingers crossed. This is the internet. Anybody can do anything. Let's. As far as numbers go, we didn't get any numbers out today. No real numbers, no big numbers out today. We did have the Red Book number come out, but we had a bunch of Fed speakers, of course. We have the ongoing headlines in the Middle East. Is the Strait of Hormuz closed? Is it open? We saw recently that the U.S. Navy ships are going to be escorting the oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, which led to oil prices coming back down after a highest prices we've seen in oil since 2023. A ton of movement, continued escalations. It seems like missiles being launched in a bunch of different places. I think the most important thing, we say it all the time, is pray for peace, pray for our traders in all parts of the world. Shout out to Mo. Message. I saw somebody concerned about Mo yesterday. I messaged him. He said he's good. He's all good to go. Him and his family is good. We just pray that that stays that way. Coach Paul, anything you got on the news? I'm gonna go check on my dog real quick because it sounds like he's chewing something he's not supposed to. I'll be right back. Anything you got on the news?
just to repeat what you said, up news headlines coming just about every hour. A lot of uncertainty, but as futures traders, we're used to uncertainty. This is going to continue for a while. This is hour to hour, headline to headline out of the Middle East. So stay tight, keep your focus on risk management. With this heightened news events, and good advice is to lower your size if possible. Other than that, I think that headline, Trump will escort tankers through the straits, that helped, but um, it's still going to have someone. I think it heightens the uncertainty, but I
I
can't
agree.
control that.
I agree. I agree. Let's look at the quote board here. We got 36 different markets we can trade with Topstep accounts. Today to the downside, we had the Nikkei down 3.99%, silver down 7.02%, and platinum, our biggest percentage mover to the downside, down 9.29%. To the upside, all of the energies. RBOB gasoline futures up 3.32%, crude oil up 4.67%, and heating oil, our biggest percentage mover to the upside, up 9.3%. To talk
Wow.
about our big four, we got crude oil up 4.72, the S&P down 0.96%, gold down 3.87%, and the Nasdaq, our biggest percentage mover. Actually, nope. Just rounding out our big four, crude was the biggest percentage mover in the big four, but Nasdaq down 1.13% on the day. I'm going to pull up a Nasdaq chart here, Coach Paul. Very interesting here. Very interesting. It held it up. What are you seeing on the daily here?
We're teetering on the precipice of the 200. If you add the 20 and the 50, it shows the compression a little bit more. When I mean
Yep.
that compression, we're sitting right. We're trading between the 20 and the 200, wicking under the 200. It's not yet willing to let go. Um, so we're rotating violently. Um, One thing here to look at is that 200 is at a positive slope, and it takes a
Yep.
lot to change that. So once again, we actually opened underneath it today, only to find more or some buying. So hasn't broken that yet. Still under downward rotation. Um, as you hear many times, anything can happen. I found it interesting the last 2 days we have not broken that 20-day moving average. Can we do it tomorrow? Yeah, sure. No, I mean, like anything can happen, but the uptrend, while challenged, is still in place.
Absolutely. And it was a big challenge today. Big challenge today. I saw a bunch of traders in the chat talking about the October 10th candle, the candle we keep talking about and we've been talking about since. Saw a bunch of traders saying they were going to get long on those lows because that's been the trade. Of course, this is the Nasdaq, so it's going to run that low, which is 24,405. It's going to run that low by 50 points because this is the Nasdaq, but on acceptance of price back inside that range, that was a great trade. It looked ugly for a while. The Nasdaq was down about 2.5% on the day, if not a little more, and right back up, right back up. That 20-day moving average is the upper resistance on the day. Take a look at last night. I did not trade last night. We talked about this yesterday. You know, I part of the reason I took some losses, I believe, yesterday was I was a little too eager going into the Sunday Open. So I made some plans last night and said, you know what, I'm not going to trade. Uh, Last night would have been a great night to
You
trade.
mean you don't trade 24 hours a day? You get
I
sleep?
mean, it's hard not to.
It
It's
is.
it's hard not to. But when you see a move like this, it's like, man, maybe I should have looked at the markets. But really nice urgency last night. There was an aggressive sell off. I think if we look at the hourly, Dakota was saying, yeah, this is 9 candles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Actually, there's a way easier way to do that. 11 hourly candles to the downside. 11 hours in a row, straight selling in the Nasdaq. What was that? Almost 600 points. Beautiful sell-off last night. Again, these are headline-driven markets. They're going to be volatile. Daily ATR in the Nasdaq is like 483. Today we had almost a 660 point range, high to low, and a really nice sell-off last night. Under that 200 moving average on the 30. Just a great two-sided market again, and it's been that for months now. On a higher time frame, the fact that we're still in this range is giving opportunity on both sides, which to me, Coach Paul, is a great reminder that we don't have to eagerly rush into any trade.
No, be quick, but don't hurry. The words from UCLA coach John Wooden, work in basketball and in trading. When you're in a hurry, you're usually rejecting any information you just want in. It's a reaction, a jerk reaction. But being quick is waiting for your setup, waiting for a
Yep.
defined opportunity. And if you're
Yeah.
patient in that way, there was plenty of opportunity.
Yes, there was. Yes, there was. Let's take a look at the New York session open. Was an interesting open here. I'm actually going to switch over to traded the Russell. I don't normally look at the Russell. I traded the Russell. Most of my profit from the day came from shorting the Russell. Very similar story here if we look at a higher time frame. Right, still in that range, still very range bound, not as beat up as the Nasdaq. On the 30, we see it under the 200 moving average. Another one. Percentage wise, the Russell had the biggest swings. At one point, we were down 3% on the day at the lows. Look at last night's open. We even talk about the Russell maybe not trading so much in the overnight session. Actually, we were down 4% on the day from the open. But if we look at the New York session open, I got short under VWAP. Wasn't the most urgent trade, and it was kind of hard to come by extreme urgency once we got to the New York session because these markets were already so extended, Coach Paul.
Yes.
Like,
And I
how
just
far are you
want
going
to,
to stretch the rubber band?
how far that's a really good point. All these markets finished what percentage lower, and we had a
Yeah,
rally
right,
inside of that. So, like you said, they were
right.
extended, and all of them after from what well, at least the S&P and the Nasdaq rallied off the initial balance. At that point, that it was more like the selling stopped than there was cheap buying, and we've seen that the last 2 days because we're stair stepping lower. We're still. I just looked at Nasdaq is still 200, almost 300 lower, and I
Yeah,
feel like there was a
yep.
big rally. So
There was, yeah,
yeah,
huge intraday
and there
rally,
was.
and we're still down, on the day. So, yeah, ton of great movement, ton of great action. If we look at the S&P, so the one thing that shout out to Andre, me and Andre talk a lot about what the market's looking like. Prior day lows, right? Prior day low is just it's a horizontal level. It means something. It was relevant yesterday. One of the things we were talking about during the opening call was, and there's the grammar police, Coach Paul, that are going to say, I called this a potential inside day. And then the chat says, well, how's it going to be an inside day if it looked below the low? And what I meant was the potential to close inside of yesterday's range, which is what we got. And the reason I look at that is, see this low here, this blue line? This is the S&P,
Mhm.
67, 68, 50. We talk all the time about where price advertises and where volume agrees with the advertisement of price. We look at the S&P today. That red line is VWAP.
Yeah.
This is where you start to look for the extension of volume. Is it a coincidence that VWAP stopped above the prior day low? This is all empty price action here. There's not enough convinced selling to continue to keep the market lower, which then what does that normally look like on a daily? We get a close inside the prior day's range. Go ahead, Coach Paul. You were going to say something there.
No, that confirms the selling stopped rather than
Yep.
good buying. The selling just stopped, and you hit it. That's a great. So we explored into that lower region under yesterday, which turned into a wick, but
Yep.
the it's not healthy buying. It's not like, boy, this is a great place to buy, and you have institutions
Oh
because
no.
look at the volume. Once again, it's light volume on those lows, light volume on the
Yeah.
rally. This is kind of
More
what
than I think.
starting to. It feels like a bear market rally.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, it does. I'm curious to see the open interest numbers tomorrow, what those look like. And like you said, this may not just be a great place to just blindly get long here because this isn't maybe necessarily great buying. But when we look below that prior day low and volume doesn't go with it, that might be a good indication of not looking for shorts, not continuing to look for shorts when we've stretched the rubber band so far. Right, we were above the daily ATR range already in the overnight session. How much more were we really expecting to see this bounce? Maybe you buy it when we get price acceptance back inside the prior day range after the look below. And then if that's the case, if you look at that like an opening range trade, that's a beautiful trade there. I'm kind of doing this in hindsight, but those prior day lows and highs, those are levels that you can get on the top step levels indicator. I think they're important to look at. I think they're important to look at. Again,
Well,
the higher time frame structure. If we look at the candle that closed back inside the prior day's range, that's an urgency trade to the upside, breaking the
that's a,
market up in fragments.
I'm glad you brought that was going to be my suggestion. So let's look at the session VWAP from last night's opening.
Red line here.
Yeah, let's see all the action from last night's opening. That was the first time since the breakout that it closed above the
Yeah.
session VWAP. And now that to me is the confirmation that selling stopped.
Right.
Now I don't. It's not the trade I'm looking for, but it identifies that. So I like what you did here, but mapping out yesterday's low. Shout out to Andre. But now we have ideas, and this is what I'm working with you, Coach. My shout out to you is volume can show that using
Yeah.
anchored VWAP, and that wow. So there's many different ways to trade. I
Yeah.
know in the day trading, I look for only two different things. The rest can go without me. Now, intraday, that's that's great. I mean, that just shows you where the selling stopped.
Yep. Yeah. Another one here in the Nasdaq, that dotted white line, that is the prior day low. Once we get and we can see price advertises lower than it. And this was a good short. This was a good short initially from the opening range trade. It was, a little bit tougher in the Nasdaq. We spent a lot more time in that in this opening range here. But I put up a video the other day on an S&P trade that I took in the morning. It's very similar to this one, where even if you're getting short here, this is a great move to the downside, right? If you can find a place to short here, we rejected off that full session VWAP. This is 300 points to the downside. You might not even care what happens at the rest of the day. I got my move, and that's it. But if I'm short and I'm looking for, and it's inevitable, Coach Paul, you've been in a short where you're just like, oh man, this is the big one, right? This is going to go, the
I'll take
Nasdaq's
the
trading at
red
24,000. We're going to be
Maserati.
at, right. Yeah, exactly. Start shopping, planning vacations, looking at that prior day low and seeing that you might be even from the regular trading hour session, right? The red line here is regular trading hour VWAP. Another one that didn't cross below. So if you get hungry eyes, right, and you think there's a way bigger trade here, understand that in order for this to continue, we need some volume to go with it. And they stopped, right? So if they stopped, then that could be a sign that the flow is over to the downside. And then we get,
Initial
500
balance.
point rally. 500, yeah, that was the initial balance low. Initial balance low set right there.
We put,
We have a
yeah, you can,
500-point rally in a down day in the Nasdaq.
we still finished 300 lower.
Right. Yeah.
So now, one thing with that initial balance, let's look at an hourly chart.
Just curious how everyone did trading today. I don't think I asked that question. We
Uh,
started. How did everybody's trading day go? Here's the hourly.
so
I think we have to look at it.
on the opening
There you
hour,
go.
we can attach an anchored VWAP. Because that's going to attach to the initial balance. So it didn't trade underneath that initial balance, and we found buyers. I mean, it launched immediately. So sometime if you're short, I'll use that. We talk about measuring from that point. If we go back to a 3 hour, I mean a 3 hour, 3 minute, we can still get an idea. So that would be right at the bottom of that, the first hour. So it's just a great tool that was not available until what, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe longer, but in recent past that I know wasn't available when I was in a trading pit. You guessed that volume.
Yeah.
That anchored VWAP is organic information. So just a great tool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Snooze You Lose says Nasdaq was down near 3% for the day when those buyers came in. If you didn't take profits and tilted shorting, it was a tough one. Only 8 days in the past 12 months have we closed more than 2.5% in the Nasdaq, and today was not one of them. It's a great point. You know, it's one of the things, and it's not anything that I base trades solely on, but I keep this quote board up all the time, and snooze you lose. I didn't have the exact stats, but I know when the Nasdaq starts getting near 3% day to the downside, I start to question how much room there is left. And it's the same thing as looking at a daily ATR. It doesn't happen often, and then you kind of put the whole picture together. It's okay, yeah, there is some negative news, but is this negative news validating what we're seeing? And is the volume validating what we're seeing? If not, then there's a high likelihood. You just said 8 days in the past 12 months. I'm sure we've been down more than 3%. There's a high likelihood of that V-shaped recovery um, if it gets too extended. B-Man says, sat on your hands. Pretty girls love 420. No trades today. UOP George, flat in the XFA, blew a combine. Go figure. Well, if you were gonna lose an account, that is the one to do. Keep that XFA safe. That's the one we can take payouts from. Trading went well for Pretty Lily. Trading Louis lost an XFA, up a few bills for Shanks a million. Al passed the combine, your fifth one. Nice job. Tiny Green Day for Courtney. Brad up in the XFA and passed another combine. Hopefully, everybody, whether you were up on it or down on the day, you followed a trading plan. I was up on the day, and today was probably one of my, one of my best trading days recently. Not P&L wise, but just from an execution perspective, especially after yesterday getting out of the plan. Today, getting back to, hey, I'm just going to execute the plan. Wasn't the best, I'm not going to remember this trading day P&L wise a year from now, but it was a well executed day. I'll say that.
And you traded with comfort.
Yeah,
So you make
exactly.
better decisions and also, I'm going to say this again, and I hope this helps. You can have a red day, the quote unquote red day, and traded perfectly. It fits in an uncertain environment. Like you
Yeah,
avoided getting blown out. You really managed risk. So one of the things
yeah,
that I strongly suggest is don't get into a green red. Green is good, red is bad. That can really hold
yeah,
you back because it can set
for
you
sure.
off to chasing profits. In my 4 decades, I could out of the top 5% of worst trading days came from chasing losses, just trying to make make back the money I lost. Th-
Yep,
It's like digging it deeper. So as you mature as a trader, start bringing that into your mindset is I can lose money and trade it perfectly. That's well within the possibilities of good trading.
for sure. For sure. Let's look at yesterday's high, yesterday's low. Let's take these off of here for now. Look here. Let's go over to gold here. Gold on the daily. What are you seeing here, Coach Wall?
A challenge. Now,
Yeah.
I was talking about this morning. If you, economically speaking, if you told me missiles would be launching in the Middle East, Straits of Hormuz threatened to shut down, oil prices up 7%, that gold would break $250, I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that. That's not possible.
Right.
And yet it happened. Um,
Yeah.
I, this was, but my gut tells me that some entities sold gold because gold, by owning gold, is a hedge against inflation or chaos. We're in the middle of chaos. It seems to me some entity took some gold off the table.
Hmm.
Now, technically, when we go through the half hour, you could see it. But right here, it's threatening this bounce. Has it
Yep.
yet? It can't. I don't think it could take more selling because it could cascade. Where did we break down to? 20-day moving average, which
50% of
we
this sell
held.
off, 20-day moving average.
Yeah, it's a key point. Let's watch that tonight. I don't think it could take more liquidation. I call that a liquidation selling.
Right.
Just
Uh,
looking at the background, I mean, that would I would say I would have said before this happened, there's no way that could happen. But then again, we say anything can happen, and boy, did it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Billy, I agree with you. You said did really good on both sides. Never feels good when war causes the volatility. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And you have the option too, right? Sometimes I get what you're saying there, Billy. Let's take a look at the 30-minute chart here in gold. Hold on one second. I'm gonna make these lines a little bit bigger. So I want to look at prior day lows, prior day highs, right? We'll take the shorter term moving averages off. And last night's open, here we are. Last night's
Okay.
Globex open, we had a little bit of a rally. We rallied into kind of midpoint of yesterday's range and kind of failed there. But we know when the volume really comes in for the metals, Shanghai open. A little bit of a different story here, Coach Paul.
Okay, I didn't trade gold last night. I would have taken a
Yeah,
great loss.
on
What
the
do I
long.
mean by that? All along, there was urgency, if I'm not mistaken, on the
Yeah,
upside. I don't. I'd be long. Once again, I don't
yeah,
have to be right. I just have to trade right. Two things that happened before this break. Now, as we've discussed, there's the Globex open. Now, okay, it broke out of that range. VWAP followed it. Yay! There's nothing guaranteed. I still have uncertainty, but this goes right into risk management. This is this would be the best loss you ever took.
yep.
two ways. If it breaks the low of the opening range, we could do two ATRs, whichever one. It's designed to get you out of the beating. You could take you're a boxer, you can take a couple shots, but you can't drop your arms and get knocked out. So we had that urgency, the upside, but then we frame out Shanghai, and I do this at night. Shanghai is, I've got some good information, and it rallies. Now I want to see what happens when Shanghai opens.
Here is the 3-minute on the Shanghai Open, which we've talked about here. Maybe scaling down and going to a shorter time frame that would have triggered a long as well. On a shorter time frame, if you go back to the 30, though, on the 30, again, depends on the time frame, right? You may not be looking for a longer time frame trade. Higher time frame said that this was still a heavy market. Here's Shanghai on the 30. And I don't want to confuse anybody by switching back and forth time frames, but I will say I do that, right? I will look at a 3-minute and a 30-minute. I might take a trade on a 3-minute and be out of it by the time the 30-minute candle finishes printing. So maybe for a quick scout, but on the 30, what are you seeing here?
Well, we say failed buying. Now we went from Globex Open to Shanghai. Shanghai had a bit of a follow through on the short term, but that half an hour VWAP stayed in. Now at this point, I can move my stop up for a reason. Okay, and we've seen this pattern. Shanghai has more dominance in the movement than just the Globex Open. So right off of those highs, we broke the next half an hour. I could get stopped out there for an earlier exit. All right. I could keep my original stop in. But what I'm saying is, here, you had some evidence to be long. That's
Yeah.
And then if you're just looking at the headlines, literally all hell is breaking loose throughout the world.
Yep.
But but look at that breakdown out of that opening range from Shanghai. What did it do to session VWAP?
To the upside, nothing. It was flat, and then later in the session is when we started to see the volume started come in.
So that selling made a difference. But not only we have new lows, VWAP went negative, started ticking down. Now, was that institute a short? Yeah, but you have to frame out your risk. But that was the beginning of this. And now, just cascading selling. That's why I think it was a
it did not
larger.
stop.
Yeah, that's why I think it was a larger entity taking money off the table. That's my feeling. But I don't know that. But watching the flow, watching the volume and price and how it interacts, you could have got short there. If you were bought it early, think about that. If you lost a couple hundred reasonable dollars, that's a great trade. Where the problem comes when you're fighting that flow. Oh, I don't know. It's got to go back up. There's missiles. I think crude oil at the time was $7 higher.
Right.
So going back to my theme today is you can have a negative day, a red day, and still have traded well.
Yeah, absolutely. Sleepy Mocha in the chat says took a big loss in gold today, long looking for breakout at all-time highs. And I think what Coach Paul kind of just went through, right? At what point do we accept that maybe we are wrong on the timing and location of the trade or the idea in general, right? There was, this move was so big in gold that if I wasn't at a point that I accepted a loss, could lose any size account in a move like this, right? This is a $400 move, almost high to low. So at some point, right? And I think when we look at it this way and take notes, journal, whatever you did, we kind of do journaling here for everybody. But journal your executions. One of the things I ask myself all the time when I have a losing day bigger than I expected is, at what point could I have stopped? Right? At some point, there's like, it's just like, okay, the market is saying no, right? And when you review that, and it's a hard thing to do, right? No, it's uncomfortable to admit that you're wrong. Uh, in trading and not in trading, right? Just in life in general, sometimes it's hard for people to accept that they're wrong. And the unfortunate part is when we do that in trading, it costs us money, sometimes more than we are truly willing to lose. And that's why that 12% rule that Coach Paul has, don't lose that in more than a day, is because sometimes I'm going to be very, very wrong. And I may not be able to realize it in time enough to stop myself from making that same wrong decision. And that's where the system just cuts me off. Okay, you hit your 12%, you're wrong, but you're not going to lose too much, right? When you say you took a big loss, to me it sounds more than measured, and that starts with not accepting that I'm wrong. And you said you were looking for all-time highs in gold. Not a bad trade thesis going into it, right? Coach Paul just said, with all the headlines that are flying around, how bullish gold was over the past couple of days, even though the volume that it made this move on was kind of shaky. Uh, Not a bad trade thesis, but that trade thesis, you know, it just shouldn't cost that much. Um, and it's okay. It's going to happen. But I would just say, journal it and find out at what point you could have said, "Hey, that trade idea was invalidated," and that might not even mean you flip bias and go the other way. That just might mean, I would take, if I was trying to buy this, Coach Paul, and losing a little bit of money, like you just said. If I lost a little bit of money trying to buy gold today, I'm a winner
Yeah.
with a red P and
Well,
L.
and the way you just described that, and we've been through this, I just every trader I know has gone through this. You could because right, really, the framework is, and I've done, and I know this all well. It was at that point you're making decisions based on your ego, right? That's that part is when we talk about being wrong. So journal it. It's important milestone. This is a milestone you learn from. Because I
Yeah,
had a trader I was coaching once. He goes, "Yeah, your ego is not your amigo in trading." And I actually
yeah,
pasted that. It really helped me really understand that. One of the exercises you can look is if you were buying it or holding it, see, take a look at the session VWAP because that measure yourself against that because that's what you are really
yeah,
fighting.
yep.
And when you can accept
Downward
that,
flow.
sure, it helps that decision. Like that's what I wanted to do, but this is what's happening. And one of the exercises Pete Stottlemyre gave me because he saw that in me years and decades ago was trade one side. So you are looking to buy it. Where am I wrong? You may not want to sell it, but you can start beginning a disciplined trading plan. Like that's what I mean. Going back, you could have bought this, taken a loss. I mean, even just a $500 loss, but that's it.
Right.
Like, boy, am I glad I got out.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Huge move there in gold today. What will tomorrow bring? We will see. Kind of trade around 5,100 on the close here. More volatility. I saw a question in the chat. Can we get back to trading the normal size? Don't even need to. There's so much volatility in this market that a couple of micros you could make. Uh, you could have a hell of it. You could make, and you could lose also, right? We have to talk about both sides of the market, but you could make more trading gold micros in this volatility than you can trading big Nasdaq contracts. There's so much volatility in this market, and Hogan and I were talking about this earlier today. We've mentioned it as well. In extremely volatile markets, while there is a thin spread, trade technically very well. So there's a ton of opportunity. I don't think many people need to be trading gold micros, gold big contract right now. Let's take a look at crude oil. Wait, we can lose trades.
Best loser
Uh,
wins.
all right. Taking a look at crude oil here. Crude oil on the daily, Coach Paul. What are we seeing here? I want to mark that prior day high as well. What are you seeing here?
Still very bullish. Nice wick off the highs, what those 4-year highs. But that structure is still very bullish. We still have that, what is it, $4 gap, but still structurally very sound. Okay, no matter what we talked about, is I don't want to get short. And I'll picture
Correct.
yourself as a you want to go home short. I'm talking about a
Oil? No.
larger. You got a oil.
No.
So still reflection. We had a break on some news. We didn't break yesterday's low. We didn't touch the gap. We still finished. I mean, this is how wild these markets are. We still finished higher on the day. Let's let that sink in. Still was $3.50 higher on the day. I mean, it felt like if you just look at that this is the ultimate description of volatility. But
Yep.
still, daily bull market still intact, if not just beginning. Wow, look at the
Absolutely.
volume.
Let's take a look. Yeah, one of the highest volume days we've seen in a very long time in crude oil. Again, highest prices we've seen going back 2.5, 3 years here. Let's take a look at the 30-minute chart here. AJ, why would I do that? Let's take a look at the 30-minute chart. We got some urgency early. Urgency early here in gold. Sorry, crude oil. Wow. First 30-minute candle. Is it worth framing out the first 30-minute candle? I don't know. You tell me. Here's that first 30 minutes. We looked below that range initially on the first candle, but outside of that, we didn't even really get urgency. But when that volume started to pick up in the Asia session, it's a beautiful trade. And
Hold on, coach. I'm gonna call,
okay. I drew the box incorrectly. It couldn't have been that perfect. Go ahead, coach.
yeah. I will reframe that urgency to a point is if we look at session VWAP, we
Hmm.
plunged lower. Actually, I bought crude and got stopped out on the lows. I just wanted to see if it can continue. But let's
Yeah.
let's go over session VWAP and watch how it starts ticking up off the bottom.
Hmm.
As we go, session VWAP right there ticks higher. And it keeps, then we break out. What is it doing? Keeps ticking higher. We touch it. So session VWAP reflects the overall volume, buyers versus sellers, puts it in the equation, and it's going higher. Reading the market, at least I don't want to fade this. It's a great place to do a buy program. Whatever it is that you
Yeah.
do, you're getting information. Now, if we frame out China, Shanghai open, because we don't see this kind of movement in Asia too often.
Here we are. Shanghai Open.
Okay. So, I mean, what in that structure do you want to fade? Well, probably not until we get a large candle of selling with off the top. What was that, about 5 o'clock in the morning? Whatever was that, London? That half hour with the
Where are
large
you looking?
selling
Here?
candle? Yeah.
This is 7 a.m. Eastern time, 6 a.m. Central time.
All right.
But
So
we
even
did make
London
a new
didn't
high
sell it.
outside of that. Right. No, they didn't. They did not. I think this was maybe just some profit taking. or something. And we did have the big sell off. I know a lot of the time, maybe you missed this entire move. By the time we got to taking the opening range trade in both gold and crude oil today, uh, it was in a space where it could be tough to take a trade. Here's the 1 minute opening range that we took, 1 minute opening range trade, which actually turned out to be a pretty good trade. But when you get to see the markets like this, correct away, on a 1 minute opening range, we came, by the time we're opening up, we've already had a $5 rally in oil. It's a tough trade to take. I don't care who you are. But I think a good way to look at it is, and who said this in the chat? Del Sol says, Dina Del Sol says, I'm always getting stopped out of my trades. One of the things that you could look at, and we haven't mentioned this in a while, but this is a opening range trade that I was comfortable taking. It triggered a long in crude oil, which with everything going on, if I'm going to trade crude oil, I personally haven't been trading it much, but if I'm going to trade crude oil, more often than not, I'm going to want to be long, even after the market's already rallied $5. The one thing you have to be conscious of is how extended this market is truly getting. And I think what we can do is look at whole number levels, right? Whole dollar levels, $78 in this case to the upside. But you don't have to, if you're buying up here, after you've gotten a pullback already, you don't have to risk the whole $5, right? That's honestly not accepting that you're wrong. At that point, if you got long crude up here and it stopped you out somewhere near $72, you, my friend, have a problem with accepting that you were wrong. But there was still some opportunity to the upside here on this opening range trade, an urgency opening range trade based on the 1 minute, and your risk, Coach Paul, suggestion, 2 ATRs. In this case, on a 1 minute, that's 42 ticks in crude. You get a 2-to-1 trade, right? I want to make sure that we don't get away from that. 2-to-1s with reasonable risk to reward on a day trade is a great trade. Again, this is 42 ticks, which is $420 with a one lot big contract, $42 with a mini. With a micro. There's some great opportunity in a market that at some point you were wrong. You got long here, but you were able to still make money with a reasonable risk to reward. Somebody inevitably got long crude oil today and said, "Oh, this is it. There's a war happening. I'm gonna profit off of it, right? Crude oil is going to $100. They closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is going to be that trade," and got stopped out looking for too much. Now, maybe you do want to hold on for a potential headline to come out, but managing at a 2-to-1, I think takes something off the table, right? We talked about this yesterday. The volatility that we see coming into the markets gives us all hungry eyes, Coach Paul. It's I want the big one. There's going to be a big one. There has to be. You hear the headlines going on, and can be a scary place to be if you're looking for outsized targets on some of these trades.
I love that term, hungry eyes. It's just it's a great term for greed. Um,
Hmm.
you heard me say it all the time. Reasonable trade in the day trade is taking 2-to-1 risk reward because your time is so condensed versus the market players. Now, and then going back to this, crude oil and gold or commodities that trade worldwide, literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They never stop trading. By the time it opens in the U.S., if you've ever spent time in Asia or Europe, we're at the end of the line in the commodity trading cycle. So the later when by the time the COMEX opens up in the U.S., quote unquote, the New York Open, or the move overnight in this case is, I just, I'm done. I don't want to. I don't want to enter that myself. That is pure price discovery. So then you like here you can condense it. the time frame to make a
Yeah.
trade inside of that.
Hmm.
And now you can take reasonable risk, but still, you need to condense that time. Um, and if you have
Absolutely.
hungry eyes, I don't. We talk about the daily ATR. What was it in crude? I think it's $3.50. What do I have it here?
Uh, two $2.90 right now.
Okay, say $3. We're already six
Yeah.
dollars higher. I just don't
Right.
even.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'm entering a pure price discovery, panic prices. It's not a place where a speculator really has to be, right? You know who has to be in that market? Market makers,
Right.
the cash market participants, people with open positions. You don't have to be there. And I would
For
say
sure.
a lot of the biggest losses I've seen are in these kind of markets because it just gets there's no room for error.
None. None.
So
Almost none at all. All right. That is what we got in crude oil. For Dina says, I've been hesitant to use the 2 ATR rule, but I may need to entertain that option now. I've been going with 1 ATR using a higher time frame. Been too volatile lately, though. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. We don't have to go deep dive into it again. But Dina, I think you said you were trading the Nasdaq. If the 2 ATRs on the Nasdaq is too much, try trading one of the other equity markets. It's going to be slower. It's going to be slower, but it is literally cheaper to trade, like, because we're talking about risk assessment, right? And you're doing the risk assessment where you're saying, hey, you know what? I can't risk the 2 ATRs, but I still want to trade the Nasdaq, so I'm just going to risk one. And I think there's a reason why Coach Paul has that 2 ATR suggestion, because when we look at it, there's often times where it's not going to get hit. Now, can I guarantee that a 2 ATR stop is not going to get hit? Absolutely not, right? I'm not going to do that. Not financial advice, but I think instead of trying to make the market fit into our accounts, we need to have our account fit into a market. And at some point, if one or two couple or a couple micros, the 2 ATRs is too much, it would just, to me, make sense to just go to a market that is like literally cheaper to trade. The micro Russell, the micro Dow, they all move really well. Everybody in the internet space right now, every other stream you watch, for the most part, trust me, I know because I've studied them all. You guys are looking at somebody who is I study everything. I watch what everybody does. Everybody in this space. Everyone is trading the Nasdaq. Everyone is trading the Nasdaq. So, you know, I get why somebody who's you may be watching streams and things like that, you know, are just going to default to that. There are other markets to trade. I love MP came on the other a couple months ago and he says, I'm not a Nasdaq trader anymore. I won't even look at it. Right. I'm not going to touch it. And that's why, right? Because you're not wrong. 2 ATRs, and you said you're looking at a higher time frame, 2 ATRs on the 30-minute in the Nasdaq in the morning, you could be talking about 200 points of risk. I've watched everyone in the space. There aren't many people who are agreeing that a 200-point stop in the Nasdaq is a legitimate stop, right? Who the hell trades with stops that wide? You can't afford to do that. No, most people can't, right? And if I get short the Nasdaq, let's say I get short the Nasdaq off of VWAP here, which would have been a valid trade on a 30-minute chart. I get short, and I don't trade off a 30-minute chart, but some people might. I get short here. The high of this candle here is 64 points from the entry if I got in short right off of VWAP. That's 55 points. Most people aren't going to trade with a stop that wide because it's 50 points. That's way too wide for the Nasdaq. 1 ATR is saying 85 points, right? 2 would have been 160. Got pretty close to a 2-to-1 there with a wide stop, but most people are trying to figure out how to trade it with a 10-point, 20-point stop. And that's just not the reality of this market. Socrates says, stop looking at me. I mean, all we're doing is trying to help. all we're doing is trying to help. But like, and trust me, I'm a person who, when I met Coach Paul, part of the reason my trade entries are so dialed in is because I had to figure out how to trade the Nasdaq with a 10-point stop. But this is when the Nasdaq was trading in the 17,000, 16,000 handle. If I try to do that now, I'm going to get stopped out of my trades, right? And so now what I do is, okay, my trade locations haven't changed. There are, and I'm not going to toot my own horn here, but there are times where I'm calling the high or the low to within a couple points of a trade. And now I have the breathing room to let the trades work because I'm not over leveraged and can just let them work. And every once in a while, I'm still going to overmanage a trade. Yes, it happens, but you know, you. How many people here are trading the Nasdaq with over a 50-point stop? But if you trade the Nasdaq, put a 1 in the chat if your stops are normally over 50 points. 2 in the chat if your stops are normally under 50 points.
I like that Pretty Lily is. I had a 60-point stop with one micro. It's
I love it.
$120. That is affordable.
Correct.
Now, with a mini, that's 10 times that. That's $1,200.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to go back to the two ATR stop. Now, you wouldn't do it on the half hour.
Yeah.
Especially, it's too much time in a day trading time frame. We go back to a
Mm-hmm.
3 minute or a 5 minute. Most people do a 5 minute. So let's look at the ATR in a 5 minute. And they're relatively similar to the 5 minute. But here on the opening, the ATR was, I think, what, about 40 points?
42.
42, 84 points. Now, when I bring that to ATR, it's got to do something extraordinary in a short term. This is an ejection seat on a fighter plane. Stop. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's when we talk about anything can happen. Well, at that point, that's like a Six Sigma move in this environment. It doesn't have. By the way, you rarely get stopped out if you do it. And I can't. If my experience. What I'm saying is When I'm saying how much can I afford if I use two ATRs? It's 84. Let's just call it 80. It's simple math. On a micro, it's $160. Now, on most accounts, $160, you can risk if you're risking $500 in an account, which for the day, you get a couple trades, but you rarely get stopped out. And if you go for 2 to 1, you can begin to control your trading risk.
Yep.
If you're at 1, you're within the variance of that time frame. While it's smaller risk, this is what I heard. I wanted 1, but you're getting stopped out. Well, it makes sense because it's vibrating at that level.
Yeah.
So it's got a outside of normal variances 2 ATRs. So that's the way I measure my risk, whether I'm swing trading or day trading. Now, with that said, you could get some new information before it hits that stop. You don't have to stay that. So now it goes above a certain level. You see some structure. You could cut that trade off. You could give it some time and bring it down to unchanged.
Right.
That's But when you first start out, is I'm gonna be. This is where I'm wrong. I have to limit it.
Yeah.
If it's too tight, it's annoying. It's like little mosquitoes. You can't escape them. You keep getting stopped out, and it leads to frustration. We
Yep.
haven't gone over that in a long time.
Yeah, we haven't. Dina's saying risk 100 points with one lot. So here's the thing, right? If you're risking 100 points and you're still getting stopped out, I think that's a great thing. What we don't want to try to do is make every single trade a winner. Sometimes you're going to get stopped out. What I would say, Dina, is that your risk is probably in the right spot. If you're trading the Nasdaq with a 100-point stop loss with a couple micros and you're comfortable taking that loss, what I would review personally is the trade entry, right? Where is there an opportunity to improve your trade entries, or is that a trade that you would take every single time and this is just a case of where you would have gotten stopped out, right? If you're trading with a 100-point stop and you're consistently getting stopped out, there's room to improve your trade entries just a little bit to put those odds a little bit more in your favor. Now, again, we're not going to make it 100%. You're not going to win every trade, but there may be room to improve your trade entries just a little bit. One of the things I would look at is maybe if you trade with VWAP or not, but looking at getting your trade entries closer to VWAP. But if you're following, and Edgy just said it in the chat, I don't care about being stopped out as long as I'm following my rules. You're following your rules, and I love the fact that you're getting stopped out with a 100-point stop, and you're saying, hey, that's a bad day, because we just talked about how important wide stops are. You're already doing it. Improve your trade location, and there's a hell of a lot of opportunity in trading the Nasdaq or maybe a slower market. But I saw a bunch of twos in the chat as far as stops being below 50 points. Would anybody agree that a downsloping VWAP on the New York session would be a decent spot to sell the Nasdaq? I mean, we've talked about it so much here. Let's say you sold right on the tick of the Nasdaq here, and you wanted to go with a 50. That's not right. Something's not right here. Is that the Nasdaq? Oh yeah. Well,
Time frame.
50 points, you would have made it. 50 points. I think I was looking at NQ. Yeah. Yep. That's the difference. That's the difference. Let's see. I think it's here. Either way, 50 points, you would have made it, but you would have been sweating. Widen out your stops a little bit. That's all I'm saying. Widen out your stops. I think that's it, Coach Paul. We talked about all the markets. We're at an hour here. Appreciate everybody joining as always. Hit that thumbs up button. Haven't done so already. We appreciate you being here. Anything else you got to say, Coach Paul, before we go?
Plan your trade your plan, be prepared, consider sizing down in this volatility. Number one principle, as Warren Buffett says, is survivorship. So good luck, good trading. We'll talk again tomorrow.
We will talk tomorrow. Trade well, everybody. We got coaches doing classes in Discord. Coach Hoop at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Coach Ray at 7. Coach Vince at 8. Slow markets tonight at 8 p.m. I will be joining Coach Dakota for slow markets tonight. Trade well, everybody. Manage your risk after slow markets. We got Aaron with the London Open at 2:30 Eastern. D with the Euro trade, 5:30 Eastern time. Then we're back for no opening call tomorrow. A little different version of Topstep TV tomorrow. So we're going to go straight into fast markets at 9:30 Eastern time, maybe a little bit before. We will see you all tomorrow. Trade well. Bye.